Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. As you may already know, the Bureau of Justice Assistance is a component of the Office of Justice Programs and plays a vital role in strengthening the nation's criminal justice system. BJ assists state, local, and tribal jurisdictions with reducing and preventing crime, reducing recidivism, and promoting a fair and safe criminal justice system. Today's webinar, Fiscal Year 2025 Public Safety and Mental Health Initiative Notice of Funding Opportunity, is presented by BJA's Senior Policy Advisor, Brooke Mount, who will discuss the NOFO and answer any questions about the process. Before getting started, we would like to go through a few housekeeping items. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded. If you are using a computer and need to adjust your audio setting, at the bottom of your screen, click on the down arrow unmute button to adjust as needed. If you are still having an issue within this icon, you can request that WebEx call your phone directly. You can submit your questions at any time, which will be answered at the end of the presentation during a Q&A session. To submit your questions, at the bottom right of your screen, click the three dots and select Q&A. Be sure to send your questions to all panelists. Closed captioning is available. The closed caption button will be visible in the bottom left corner. Thank you again for joining us. Now let's turn things over to Brooke.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining. My name is Brooke Mount, and I'm a Senior Policy Advisor with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. I support the Public Safety and Mental Health Initiative, working closely with jurisdictions nationwide to develop and strengthen behavioral health and public safety collaborations. Today, I'm going to guide you through the FY25 Public Safety and Mental Health Initiative Notice of Funding Opportunity. We're going to cover the goals, application process, and key considerations to help you determine if this is a right fit for you and your community. Our goal is to clarify the NOFO so you can craft strong, competitive applications. So let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. Here's a quick overview of what we're going to cover today just to help you follow along. We're going to start with a brief overview of the Office of Justice Programs, or OJP, so you can hear where BJA fits within the broader Department of Justice structure. From there, we'll move into a program overview of the Public Safety and Mental Health Initiative, or PSMHI, what the initiative is, what it aims to accomplish, and how it supports jurisdictions nationwide. Next, we'll walk through the key components of the FY25 funding opportunity. This will include eligibility, allowable activities, funding levels, and priority considerations that you should be aware of. After that, we'll provide an overview of the OJP funding process from application, submission, to award decisions, so you can understand each step and what to expect. We'll also highlight application resources that are available to you, including tools, guidance, documents, and support services that can help strengthen your submission. And finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A where you'll have a chance to ask questions and get clarification on anything we cover today. If we're unable to get to your question, please be sure to submit it to the OJP Response Center at the conclusion, and we will certainly be sure to apply. Next slide, please. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the OJP overview. Next slide. All right, so the Bureau of Justice Assistance is located within the Office of Justice Programs, or OJP. OJP provides a wide range of services to the criminal justice community, including grants, training, technical assistance, and research. OJP is actually one of three major grant-making components within the Department of Justice Office on Violence. So OJP is one of three major grant-making components of the Office of Justice. We also have the Office of Violence Against Women and the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or COPS. Next slide, please. The Bureau of Justice Assistance was created in 1984 to reduce violent crime, create safer communities, and reform our nation's criminal justice system. Our focus is on programmatic and policy efforts to provide a wide range of resources, including training and technical assistance to law enforcement, courts, corrections, treatment, reentry, justice information sharing, and community-based partners to address chronic and emerging criminal justice challenges nationwide. Next slide, please. BJA supports the field in three primary ways. First, through investments. BJA provides funding to help jurisdictions accomplish their goals. Second, we focus on sharing knowledge, and this includes research, training, technical assistance, and dissemination of evidence-informed practices. Our goal is to help communities learn from one another, build capacity, and improve outcomes by leveraging what we know works in the field. And finally, BJA prioritizes engagement. We stay connected with practitioners, leadership, and community partners across the country to understand local needs, elevate emerging trends, and ensure our programs are responsive and practical. These three pillars really drive everything we do at BJA. Next slide, please. Now that we've covered some background on OJP and BJA's role, let's shift into the program overview for the PSMHI. Next slide, please. The PSMHI is designed to support communities in improving how they respond to individuals with behavioral health needs, particularly where those needs intersect with public safety and emergency systems. A major emphasis on this year's NOFO is really supporting communities in building comprehensive service networks for individuals with untreated mental illness and substance use disorders. The goal is to ensure people receive care through coordinated approaches across justice, behavioral health, and community systems, rather than relying on jails or emergency rooms. The initiative helps reduce burden on law enforcement and the justice systems by funding direct intervention efforts and improving access to crisis stabilization, treatment services, and housing supports. These elements are essential for reducing unnecessary justice involvement and improving long-term outcomes for individuals who cycle between crisis, homelessness, and public safety systems. Next slide. The PSMHI focuses on 4 core areas that together strengthen a community's ability to respond effectively to individuals with serious mental illness and substance use disorders. First, crisis stabilization. This includes developing and implementing 24/7 crisis stabilization centers with dedicated law enforcement access and no refusal policies. These centers provide rapid clinical and risk assessments, appropriate intervention, and safe alternatives to arrest or emergency department drop-offs. This model ensures individuals receive timely care in the right setting. The second core area is treatment services, and this area supports coordinated approaches for identifying and effectively treating individuals, especially high utilizers whose untreated behavioral health needs contribute to homelessness, public safety challenges, and repeated system contact. It also includes the provision of evidence-based mental health and substance use treatment services, such as psychiatric medications, medication-assisted treatment, and civil commitment evaluations where clinically indicated. Another priority is the development of step-down treatment approaches, which help individuals transition to increasing levels of independence while maintaining continuity of care. The third core area is housing, and this focuses on establishing transitional housing programs with appropriate treatment participation requirements. These programs play a critical role in continuity of care for individuals with behavioral health needs and help reduce homelessness among people with serious mental illness and substance use disorders. And fourth, electronic health record systems and technology modernization. This includes upgrading or implementing EHRs and related technologies such as telehealth, with a particular emphasis on correctional settings. The goal is to improve coordination across justice, behavioral health, and crisis systems, ensuring better continuity of care, more seamless data sharing, and strong integration overall. Together, these 4 areas create a comprehensive network of crisis treatment, housing stability, and technology infrastructure that supports long-term recovery and public safety. Next slide. There are several key program requirements for applicants under this initiative. Programs must operate as true alternatives to hospitals, jails, and street-based responses for crisis care and law enforcement drop-offs. Everyone who enters the program must receive behavioral health screening and, when appropriate, a full assessment and risk evaluation to guide service planning and continuity of care. Programs also need formal protocols for identifying high utilizers, as well as safety transition to help individuals with higher acuity of needs while supporting compliance with treatment plans. Justice and behavioral health agencies must work together to strengthen services in communities with high homelessness rates. So applicants need to demonstrate how these partnerships will enhance coordination and how they will improve information sharing with courts and community supervision. The goal is to support more effective decision-making and accountability across systems while ensuring information sharing complies with applicable laws. Next slide, please. Now let's shift into the NOFO specific information. Next slide. This slide outlines who's eligible to apply for the PSMHI. Eligible applicants include state governments, units of local government, and Native American tribal governments. In addition, agencies with different legal status, such as nonprofits or for-profit mental health agencies, may apply only if they are formally designated by the state mental health authority to provide services as a unit of the state or local government. So if any agency falls into this category, they need to confirm that this designation exists before applying. For this NOFO, the term state is broadly defined, and it does include U.S. states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. If you fall into one of these groups, you are eligible to apply, but if not, you still may be able to participate through partnerships or subawards with eligible entities. Next slide, please. In addition to meeting the basic eligibility criteria we just discussed, applicants must also demonstrate strong partnerships at the local level. Specifically, every application must include at least one justice agency and one mental health agency that are both actively committed to supporting the project. This includes contributions such as staff time, access to space or facilities, service delivery, or other resources necessary for implementation. To document this partnership, applicants are required to submit a memorandum of understanding or a letter of intent from both the justice and mental health partners. This documentation is critical, and if it's not included with the application, it may not move forward to peer review. So those considering applying, we strongly encourage you to engage your partners early and ensure these commitments are in place well before submission. Please note that a draft MOU is acceptable at the time of initial application. Next slide, please. Here is an overview of the funding available under this year's opportunity. For FY25, BJA anticipates awarding approximately $42 million through this program. We expect to fund up to 14 awards, although the final number will depend on the mix of applications and the requested budgets. The anticipated start date for awards is October 1, 2025, and each award will have a total 36-month performance period, giving grantees 3 full years to plan and implement their projects from the original start date of the award. As always, we encourage applicants to propose budgets that are realistic, well justified, and clearly aligned with the project goals and activities. These figures are provided to help you plan and consider your application structure and scope. Next slide, please. The following application elements must be included in the application to meet the basic minimum requirements to advance to peer review and receive consideration for funding. Every application must include the SF 424, which is your formal application form, the proposal abstract giving us a brief overview of your project, the proposal narrative, which is the core of your application and should clearly describe your project design, goals, and implementation approach, the required MOU or letter of intent demonstrating partnership between at least one justice agency and one mental health agency, and finally, the budget submitted through the web-based form. And this includes both the budget details worksheet and the budget narrative, which should explain and justify each cost. Next slide, please. To advance public safety and help meet its mission, OJP will provide priority consideration to applicants that propose, as applicable within the scope of this funding opportunity, projects designed to advance the goals listed. Supporting law enforcement operations, including immigration enforcement, combating violent crime, supporting services to American citizens, protecting American children, supporting American victims of trafficking and sexual assault, and state and local law enforcement efforts that are coordinated with federal law enforcement. Next slide. In addition to those agency priorities listed, priority consideration will also be given under this NOFO to applicants in states and units of local government that actively meet the following criteria to the maximum extent permitted by law. Enforce prohibitions on open illicit drug use, enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering, enforce prohibitions on urban squatting, enforce and, where necessary, adopt standards that address individuals who are a danger to themselves or others and suffer from serious mental illness or substance use disorder, or who are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves through assisted outpatient treatment or by moving them into treatment centers or other appropriate facilities via civil commitment or other available means to the maximum extent permitted by law. Or, for state applicants, substantially implement and comply with, to the extent required, the registration and notification obligations of the Sex Offender Registry and Notification Act, particularly in the case of registered sex offenders with no fixed address, including by adequately mapping and checking the location of homeless sex offenders. Applicants seeking this additional priority consideration should complete the agency funding priorities inventory, ending crime and disorder in just grants, to indicate which criteria they are actively meeting. Next slide, please. This slide highlights an important requirement specifically for state and local government applicants. All state and local entities are required to submit the mandatory certification included in Appendix 1 of the NOFO. This certification must be uploaded in the additional application components section under disclosures and assurances. If this certification is not included, the application will not proceed to peer review. So what does this certification cover? The chief executive officer or another authorized senior official must confirm that the agency and its staff are complying with 8 USC section 1373 and 1644. It's also important to note that any subrecipient under this award must comply with these same requirements. This certification is a federal requirement, and ensuring it's completed correct is essential for your application to move forward. Next slide. This slide walks you through the first step of submitting the required certification. Applicants will need to print the certification form, which is included at the end of the NOFO in Appendix 1. Once printed, you'll fill in the required information and then have it signed by the CEO or another authorized senior official for your organization. Next slide. After you've printed and signed the certification form, there are a few additional steps to complete this in Just Grants. You'll go to the data requested within the application section and select the option for Funding Priority Inventory 2. This is a required part of completing the certification process in the system. Next, you'll select option F and then check any other priority considerations that apply. Next, you'll upload your signed certification form, and you'll do this by clicking on the Upload button in the Additional Application Components section. Make sure the document you upload is completed and the signed version of the form from Appendix 1. And once these steps are done, your certification section will be complete. Next slide. In addition to executing any agency priority areas listed earlier, the statutory priority areas for consideration include promoting effective strategies by law enforcement to identify and reduce the risk of harm to individuals with behavioral health conditions and to enhance public safety. Promote effective strategies for the identification and treatment of female individuals with behavioral health needs who are involved in the justice system. Promote effective strategies to expand the use of mental health courts, including the use of pretrial services and related treatment programs for offenders. Propose interventions that have been shown by empirical evidence to reduce recidivism. When appropriate, use validated assessment tools to target preliminarily qualified offenders with a moderate or high risk of recidivism and a need for treatment and services. Demonstrate the strongest commitment to ensuring that such funds are used to promote both public health and public safety. And demonstrate the active participation of each co-applicant in the administration of the collaboration program. It's important to note that addressing these priority areas is one of the many factors that OJP considers in making funding decisions, and receiving priority consideration for one or more priority areas does not guarantee a funding award. Next slide, please. There are a total of 3 main goals in this initiative. Goal 1 focuses on establishing or enhancing cross-system collaboration to address untreated mental illness and substance use disorders that contribute to public disorder and homelessness. This includes developing or enhancing crisis stabilization centers with dedicated law enforcement drop-off capacity and civil commitment evaluation capabilities. Goal 1 also emphasizes expanding access to mental health and substance use treatment, including crisis intervention services and appropriate institutional care options for those individuals who may present a danger to themselves or others, or who are unable to meet their basic needs. And finally, this goal supports increasing access to transitional housing for individuals exiting crisis stabilization or justice settings. This helps to prevent homelessness, supports ongoing crisis support with clear expectations for treatment participation. Next slide, please. Goal 2 aims to reduce burden on law enforcement and jails by strengthening crisis response systems and improving access to appropriate civil commitment pathways. This includes implementing no refusal policies and streamlined intake processes for law enforcement referrals, along with protocols to identify individuals who may benefit from civil commitment and assisted outpatient treatment. It also involves creating clear agreements and procedures to ensure consistent crisis response and smooth reentry transitions that connect people to the right level of treatment. And finally, Goal 2 focuses on training law enforcement, court personnel, and mental health providers on civil commitment and assisted outpatient treatment laws, criteria, and referral processes. Next slide. Goal 3 focuses on modernizing technology and data systems to strengthen information sharing, coordination, and accountability between justice and behavioral health systems. This includes enhancing EHRs and other technology in correctional settings to support better care during incarceration, improve pre-release planning, and ensure continuity of treatment through reentry. A key part of this work is establishing appropriate and secure data sharing pathways between justice and behavioral health systems. This goal also emphasizes the importance of cross-agency collaboration to address vagrancy and homelessness and to support overall community safety. Next slide. Now I want to highlight how funded awards will help advance the overall goals and objectives of the PSMHI. First, awards will help communities build or strengthen a coordinated continuum of services across crisis stabilization, treatment services, housing, and technology modernization, the 4 core areas. Awards will also expand access services from pre-arrest through reentry, ensuring individuals with varying levels of behavioral health needs can connect to timely care and support. Together, these investments reduce justice involvement, improve outcomes for people with behavioral health needs, and enhance community safety. Next slide. Award recipients will be expected to produce several key deliverables that demonstrate their implementation approach and ability to sustain impact. First, applicants must develop an action plan that outlines collaborative, cross-system development of the project and describes the implementation approach across all of the required service areas. Second, applicants will need to submit a memorandum agreement or understanding, which details the partnership structure and the specific responsibilities of each justice and behavioral health agency involved. Remember, this is also part of the basic minimum requirements at the time of application. However, during application, a draft is accepted. Third, recipients must prepare a sustainability and replicability plan. This plan explains how the program's successes will be sustained beyond the grant period and how key elements can be replicated in other jurisdictions. And finally, awardees must complete a final report that analyzes program outcomes and results, demonstrating program towards the goals and objectives of the initiative. These deliverables help ensure that the program implementation is coordinated, accountable, and positioned for long-term impact. Next slide. This funding opportunity requires an escalating percentage cash or in-kind match from the award recipient, which increases over the life of the award. Now let me explain what this means and how it works. First, what is a match? A match means the portion of the project costs not paid by federal funds or contributions unless otherwise authorized by federal statute. Now here's how the matching requirements break down by year. For years 1 and 2, the cost share is an 80-20 split, meaning BJA supports 80% of the total project costs and the recipient provides the remaining 20%. In year 3, the match increases to a 60-40 split, with the recipient responsible for 40% of the total project cost. In other words, federal funds awarded under this funding opportunity may not cover more than 80% in years 1 and 2, and not more than 60% in year 3 of the total cost of the project being funded. Now, before we move on, I want to briefly explain how the match requirement is calculated and broken down step by step. For years 1 and 2, the federal share is 80% and the recipient match is 20%. So in the example of a $3 million award, the federal portion for these first 2 years comes out to $2 million, or $1 million each year, which results in a required match of $500,000. In year 3, the federal share decreases to 60% and the recipient match increases to 40%. Using the same example, this means the year 3 match requirement is about $666,667. When you add all 3 years together, the total match needed is approximately $1.17 million. Again, this is simply illustrating the math behind the 80-20 and 60-40 splits. Now, what types of matches are acceptable? Match contributions can be provided in cash or in kind, as long as they're allowable, necessary for the project, and properly documented. What are your responsibilities as an applicant? An applicant must identify the source of the 20% and 40% non-federal portion of the total project costs and explain how they will use the match funds. It's important to note that if an award recipient's proposed match exceeds the required match amount and OJP approves the budget, the total match amount in the approved budget becomes part of the project budget and subject to audit. Finally, let's talk about allowable uses of match funds. Match funds may be used only for the purposes that would be allowable for the federal funds. This means neither federal funds nor matching funds may be used for costs considered inappropriate by the awarding agency, such as lobbying, land acquisition, or fundraising. Next slide. It's important to know that you can't spend award funds on. The NOFO lays out program-specific restrictions, and these include things like lobbying, activities outside the program scope, or anything that violates federal law. If it's not directly tied to what the program funds, you can't charge it. If you're not sure whether or not something is allowable, please check the NOFO and the financial guide, and you can always ask us if you're unsure. Next slide. Although specific requirements may vary, I want to quickly walk through how all of OJP applications are reviewed. First, applications must come from an eligible applicant type. If the applicant isn't eligible, the applicant can't move forward. Second, the request has to fall within the program's funding parameters. That means the amount requested and the type of activities proposed need to align with what the program allows. Third, the application must be responsive to the scope of the NOFO. In other words, the proposal needs to clearly address the goals and expectations of the program, not something unrelated or outside the boundaries of the NOFO. And finally, all required components must be included. Applications missing any of the basic minimum requirements cannot proceed to peer review, so please double check for completeness. This is essential before submitting. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at how applications are scored during the merit review process. First, we look at the statement of the problem, description of the issue, which is worth 5%. This is where you clearly define the issue or problem you are proposing to address with the project. Next, project goals and objectives make up 20%. Reviewers look for a strong connection between the problem you identified and the goals you plan to accomplish. Another 20% is based on the project design and implementation. This is essentially your roadmap, how you plan to carry out the work. The largest category at 30% is the capabilities and competencies. This evaluates the applicant's administrative and technical capacity to successfully complete the project. The budget accounts for 10% and should clearly align with your project design. Reviewers also consider your plan for collecting the data required for performance measures, which is 5%. And finally, sustainability is 10%. This is your plan to address how the project will continue to operate and be maintained once the award funding has ended. Next slide, please. Please review the handy application checklist beginning on page 35 of the NOFO. This provides a breakdown in developing a complete application package. Remember, if basic minimum requirements are missing, your application will not proceed to review. Next slide. Now I'd like to provide you with a high-level overview of how the OJP funding process works from start to finish. Next slide. Your entity must register with SAM.gov and obtain a unique entity identifier, and you must maintain an active SAM.gov registration at all times. For entities new to SAM.gov, the registration process can take some time, so start early, honestly, at any point during the year, to be sure your status reaches active before you need to submit a funding application. Renew your registration in SAM.gov every 12 months. Even if you've applied for a federal grant before, you need to check that your registration is current and renew it if it's not. Applicants that do not have an active SAM.gov status will not be able to complete step 1 of the application process in grants.gov. Also, be sure that your organization's points of contact in SAM.gov, especially the electronic business point of contact or eBiz POC, are current. The eBiz POC may receive notices about time-sensitive actions they need to take during the application process. Next slide. Applications are submitted to DOJ electronically through a 2-step process, and you'll be required to register and add users in 2 different systems. For step 1, you'll submit the application for federal assistance, or SF-424, in grants.gov. For step 2, you'll complete the full application in JustGrants, which is DOJ's grants management system. Note that we recommend completing each step at least 48 hours before the deadline, not waiting until the deadline to submit materials. This is to ensure that you have time to address unexpected errors and make corrections if needed. As a reminder, the grants.gov deadline is earlier than the JustGrants deadline. Next slide. A few important points about grants.gov. Be sure everyone you plan to have work on your funding application can access and take actions in grants.gov. Do this in advance of the application to be sure you're ready to submit it when the time comes. Grants.gov will allow entities with an active SAM.gov registration status to submit an application for federal assistance, so check to be sure your registration is not expiring soon. One common question about the SF-424 is, do I need a firm budget amount to submit this form? The answer is no. You can provide an estimate on this form and then update your funding request in JustGrants. Once submitted, the SF-424 helps to pre-populate standard information in your JustGrants application. One other note about the SF-424, the individual listed in Section 8F of this form is automatically identified as the application submitter in JustGrants. So be sure that person is checking their email and is prepared to complete the application in JustGrants during step 2. If this is your entity's first DOJ application, your SAM.gov eBiz point of contact will also need to monitor their email and prepare to take actions to onboard your entity into JustGrants as you move to step 2. You can find more information about the SF-424 in the links provided in the NOFO. DOJ made one change to the grants.gov step this year. We're no longer requiring that every applicant submit an SFLLL in grants.gov. Instead, applicants will be asked about their lobbying activities in the JustGrants application. Next slide. Your JustGrants application will align with the requirements described in the NOFO. Generally, applications contain most of these sections. The standard applicant information in JustGrants is pre-populated with data from your SF-422. You'll need to review and make edits as needed to the information in JustGrants. You do not need to go back and make changes to your SF-424 in grants.gov. Just be sure that the information in JustGrants application is accurate and complete. The proposal abstract is a brief summary of your proposed project that is publicly available if the project is awarded. So please be sure this does not contain any personally identifiable information. The proposal narrative provides much more detail about your proposed project, including the problems and needs it will address, goals and objectives, project design, and your organization's ability to implement the project. Your budget should align with your proposal narrative and clearly explain how each cost will support the project. Costs should be reasonable and necessary for the proposed project. And since allowable costs will vary by DOJ program, you should look to the NOFO for more details on allowable and unallowable costs. For some DOJ programs, MOUs or partner letters of intent are required. Generally, these should reflect partnerships and show agreement to support your project through commitment of time, staff, space, services, or other project needs. Additional application components may be required for certain DOJ programs. Be sure to read through this section in the NOFO very carefully. You'll also need to address multiple disclosures and assurances in your application. These questions guide applicants through programmatic, financial, and legal topics to ensure applicants understand what's required of them. Read those carefully and seek clarification when needed. Next slide, please. After the Just Grants deadline has passed, OJP will thoroughly review all applications. This process typically takes several months. First, we check to confirm that the application contains that basic minimum requirements that were described in the funding opportunity. For applications that miss these requirements, you will receive a notice that your application has been eliminated from further review. For competitive opportunities, peer reviewers who are subject matter experts assess the technical merits of an application. OJP staff then assess applications based on factors such as geographic diversity, past performance, and whether applications are likely to meet the funding opportunity's goals and objectives. When we evaluate the fiscal integrity of the applicant, examine proposed costs. We then evaluate the fiscal integrity of the applicant, examine proposed costs, and determine whether the budget and budget narrative accurately explain the project's costs and whether these costs are allowable and reasonable. And finally, OJP reviews potential risks presented by applicants prior to making an award. This pre-award risk assessment takes into account a variety of factors, including an applicant's financial capability and past performance. During the review process, OJP may contact you to clarify budget details. Applicants are often eager to learn how their application is progressing through the review process. Unfortunately, DOJ staff, including user support and the OJP Response Center, cannot share any information with you until the final awards have been made public. Next slide. And if you don't mind advancing the slide one more time. Another advance. And one more. Seems like we went backward a little bit. Thank you. You can visit OJP's Grant Awards website to see all of OJP awards made by year, program, and even locality. This site is updated as awards are made. If your application is selected, specific Just Grants users for your organization will be notified by email of an award, and they will also see the award in their Just Grants account. If you receive notice of an award, you must take steps in Just Grants to accept or decline it. The DOJ Award Acceptance Checklist is on the Just Grants Resources website and can walk you through those steps. Next slide. Now I want to highlight a few key resources that can support you through the process. Next slide. I want to point you to one of the most important tools available to applicants, the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. This guide walks you through the full application process, including rules, required documents, submission steps, and common pitfalls to avoid. Next slide. Along with the OJP Resource Guide, applicants should also become familiar with the Just Grants Resources website. Here you'll find step-by-step training modules, login help, frequently asked questions, and user support, along with updates and guidance on common system issues. Next slide, please. This slide outlines where applicants can get help during the submission process. For grants.gov, which is where you submit the SF424, support is available 24/7 except on federal holidays. For Just Grants, which is where you complete and submit the full application to DOJ, assistance is available through the Just Grants support desk. Next slide. If you have any additional questions after today's presentation, the OJP Response Center is your main point of contact. They can help you answer questions about the NOFO, eligibility, requirements, or anything else you may need as you prepare your application. Next slide. As we wrap up, we encourage you to stay connected with BJA and continue accessing updates, resources, and funding announcements. You can follow us on Facebook, X, and YouTube. If you'd like to receive regular updates directly in your inbox, you can use the QR code on this slide or visit BJA's website at bja.ojp.gov to subscribe to Justice Matters and news from BJA. These newsletters are a great way to stay informed about funding opportunities, new resources, and ongoing initiatives. You can also subscribe to the Justice Program's news and funding updates at the web address on the slide. These platforms are the best way to keep up with important announcements and learn more about tools and support available to your agency. Next slide. And now we'll move into the question and answer portion of today's webinar. We'll take as many questions as time allows, and if something requires a follow-up, we'll make sure to address it after the session where the OJP Response Center will be able to address your questions. And Serena, can you? All right, we are good. I am just going to scroll through and see some of the questions. I do see that there were a lot of questions pertaining to the start date of October 2025. I just want to reiterate that the anticipated start date is correct as indicated in the NOFO. OJP anticipates this start date based on established practice of award agreement periods of performance being aligned with the federal fiscal year. Applicants should base their proposed projects on the anticipated period of performance duration for their proposed activities, timeline, and budget. OJP will work with successful applicants to address project timelines upon award and acceptance. Okay, I see we have a question for our programs office. For here, I'm going to punt this to you. The question is, if you have another BJA grant, which is only providing 70%, sorry, the questions are coming in and I just lost the question. I apologize, this toggled away as questions are rolling in.
Brooke, I can find it and answer in the chat.
Thank you, Farhia.
No problem.
Were there any other budget questions that you saw that have not already been answered? Please let me know.
I believe we are answering as we go. I've assigned some to you that are more policy focused.
Got it. Okay. All right, for here we have a question that asks, would the salary of a co-response team that pairs a law enforcement deputy with a mental health professional be an allowable expense?
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry, I missed some.
Yes. Yes. Would the salary of a co-response team that pairs a law enforcement deputy with a mental health professional be an allowable expense?
Yes, as long as they're doing any project, programmatic work, and they're in the listed as personnel, they can be paid for it.
There's another question that says, are there any grants available for individual professor of universities to do with mental health and use of force? Regarding other grants available, I highly recommend that you visit our website, bja.ojp.gov, where you are able to access a full list of the grants that we have available and search based on key terms and areas of interest. Another question asks, what is considered a designated state mental health authority for our nonprofit to receive eligibility from? In order to be designated as a state or unit of government, your mental health authority must provide you with this designation. You must reach out to them in your state for more information on whether or not you are eligible. And we have time for one more question. The question is, can the priority areas form be completed now? Yes, you should be able to complete the priority areas form as a part of the application, and the application period is currently open. So you should be able to enter all required applications in the system and components. I want to thank everyone for attending today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We appreciate the questions that you've asked today. And if your question has not been answered, again, please be sure to submit it to the OJP Response Center, where you will receive a reply. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.